Today I'm going to give you a Photoshop tutorial of this image. Alright, so first thing that you need to do is skin retouching and cutout. So on the skin retouching, I did a whole video on how to do local dodge and burn and frequency separation, and I'll put that video up here. And that also has free actions, so check that out if you're interested. So I won't go through the detail of how I did the skin retouching, so I'll just go ahead and go through the local dodge and burn real quick, and then I selected those and pressed Control Command Alt or Option plus E to compile these into a new layer. Once I had that new layer, I went ahead and pressed my frequency separation action. I already did that, so I'm going to delete that. And this is the action. So I went ahead and did frequency separation as well. I compiled this once again to a new layer by pressing Control or Command Alt or Option plus E. Once I did that, I was done with the skin retouching. So once I was done with that, I went ahead and used the pen tool to carefully select the model. This is what I came up with. All right, once I had the subject ready to go, I started to build my composition. I went ahead and put a color fill adjustment layer by going solid color, and then I did a red tone. Underneath that, I painted with a brush, a textured brush from this pack I got online for free. This is the pack, and the brush I used was snow texture. So I went ahead and brushed the design that I wanted, and I did that with any color, and then I knew I was going to be able to go adjustment layer, hue and saturation. Then I went ahead and clipped hue and saturation by pressing Alt and going in between the layers. And I clipped it to that layer I drew to make it any color I wanted. So to do that, you go to the hue and saturation properties and you press colorize, and you can change the hue to whatever you want, the saturation, and how bright or dark it is. All right, above that, I just painted with a soft brush a orange dot behind the subject and put that into screen blending mode. I did that one more time with a lower flow, and I put a hue and saturation adjustment layer onto that and clipped it with Alt or Option to create a brighter background. All right, so I wanted to add some interest into the image. So I used this water asset that I just had, and I masked out just this area. So go to layer mask, and it will put a mask on there. Next thing, I wanted to add some petals. And once again, this is just an asset that I had, and it's just some petals that I was able to cut out of an image, and I placed it into this image. On top of that, I pressed Control or Command J to copy that petal layer, and for this one I put it into linear dodge add blending mode, and I put a Gaussian blur on it for 23.5 pixels to give it kind of a blur bloom effect. There are some things that I needed to do with the subject, so I wanted to kind of make it a little bit more painterly looking, so I went ahead and used a chalk brush from this brush pack that I got online to paint over the subject to kind of give it more of a painterly look to it, and I just continued to build with that. So here I needed to have some hair coming off because it was just too flat. So I went ahead and painted this hair, and I continued to build on the hair. All right, so once I was pretty happy with the subject and everything, I just selected everything, press Control or Command Alt or Option plus E to merge that into a new layer. and delete that because I already merged it up here. So now I have a complete subject with the hair and everything that I needed in one layer. This layer is just more painting, and now I wanted to paint the cyberpunk effects on the face. So this is what I came up with, and it's just with a really soft brush that is textured in this pack. So these lines are just painted with a brush, and what I did was I just duplicated that by pressing Control or Command J to make it darker. So I made a new layer and I clipped it to this top one by pressing Alt and just clicking in the middle. And I painted with a soft brush a blue color to make it kind of glow from the center. And this layer is Linear Dodge Add blending mode, and I just put a kind of a bloom effect, and that is at a 21% fill. This is the same thing, 49% fill. Same thing, 44% fill. And this layer is to highlight some of the parts of the lines to make it more realistic looking. So I just used the same brush, except I use a lighter color on these spots that have some light that should be spilling onto. So that makes it more realistic. And then I just copy and pasted that one to make it even more bright. This layer is for the sword bloom effect, and I just put that into screen blending mode and used a yellow color to give it a little bit of a bloom. This one is just building on that. I used the same color and I just made it bigger. Then I put a hue and saturation adjustment layer and clipped it using Alt and pressing in between. And I pressed colorize and I made it darker and more of an orange color to give it a good effect. Alright, so this one is in screen blending mode, and I just put some dots next to the subject to kind of make it bloom a little bit more to add effect, and that's in screen blending mode. This is a color dodge blending mode, and this one is a little bit different. So this is for the eyes. So what I did here is I double clicked the layer and I unchecked transparency shape layer and put that into color dodge blending mode. And then I used a very low flow at 4%, and I painted with white around the eyes, and this is what I came up with. So this one is for the rim light effect, and the way I do it is I select the subject by pressing Control or Command and then the subject layer, and I selected the subject. Then I make a new layer and fill it with black. So Control or Command and backspace. Then I double click the layer and I check the layer mask hides effect. And then I reduce the fill all the way. Then you're able to use these inner shadows to create a rim light effect. All right, so the first one I used was screen blending mode with an orange color, top down angle with this distance and size. The second one, I use a screen blending mode with a bit of a lighter color orange. Reduce the opacity, same angle with this distance and this size. And I came up with that. And the good thing about this is when you check this layer mask hides effect, you can control where the effect is coming in by using a layer mask. So just press layer mask and you can paint away that effect or paint it back anywhere you want to. So it's more realistic that way. All right, so the subject was a bit bright for me. So above the group, I put a curves adjustment layer and I clipped it to the whole group by pressing Alt or Option and going in between. I used this curve and I painted away some of the edges on the mask. All right, so this is the same water effect I used for the back here. And I just put it into place right there and masked away the rest of it. This is just a smoke brush with a blue color. And once I was done with everything, I press Controller Command Alt or Option plus Shift plus E to compile everything I've done to that point into a new layer. Right click that layer, convert to Smart Object, and I went to Filter, Camera Raw, and this is what I came up with for the Camera Raw filter. And I'll just go through the edit that I did really quickly, and you can just pause the video if you want to, but I'll just go through this. And that is the difference for Camera Raw. All right, so I wanted a little bit more tonal contrast, so I put a black and white adjustment layer in there and put that into luminosity blending mode. And these are the values that I changed to change the tonal contrast a little bit. All right, so this is just a flare brush that I used to kind of give it that anamorphic flare effect a little bit. This one is a linear dodge add blending mode, and I just painted a little bit of a bloom around the subject. This is the same thing. It's just bloomed a little bit, a few parts of the image. So for this next part, I just press Controller Command Alt or Option plus Shift plus E to compile that into a brand new layer. And I duplicated it twice by pressing Controller Command and J. So I have 3 of the same image. I went ahead and grouped that by pressing Controller Command G with all of them selected. And I already did that here, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. And this is what that is. So in order to make this effect, I double click the layer and I unchecked green and blue, so it's just red. And on this one, I just went down and unchecked red and green, so this one's only red and blue, and this one's only green. And for the last one, it is only blue. So what I did was I just moved this slightly over. As you can see, when I select it, it's slightly over. And I continued to build, so this one's the other direction slightly. And this one is way over here. So you can see that the channels are green, red, blue, and they're just slightly over. And the reason why I put it into a group was so I could put a layer mask on the whole thing. So without the mask, the face is all messed up. It's not really readable for the image. So I went ahead and just put a mask on the group and masked away the face where the, where the eye goes and some of the other areas of the image that I did not want that effect in. This is just a brightness and contrast adjustment layer, and I reduced the brightness and painted with a black brush in the center to kind of give it a little bit of a vignette effect. And on the next part, I'm going to sharpen the image. So what I do is press Controller Command Alt or Option plus Shift plus E to compile everything I've done into a brand new layer. Right click that, convert to Smart Object, and then I go Filter, Other, High Pass. On the first one, I did about 60, 55. Then I put that into a soft light blending mode to sharpen the big details of the image. So I'm going to delete that, and that one is this. And what I did was I reduced the opacity to 67%, and I did the same thing once again. I just pressed Controller Command J to copy that bottom one, And then I went into the settings by pressing this and going to high pass, and I reduced that all the way down to 3.7 for the face only. So on the mask, I press Controller Command I to invert the mask to black, and then I painted with a white brush to reveal only the face area. Put that into the linear light blending mode to create a good sharpen on the face. So I wasn't really happy with the whole image and the colors, so I went ahead and pressed Controller Command Alt Option plus Shift plus E to compile everything I've done into a new layer. Right click, convert to Smart Object. I already did that. And then I went to Filter, Camera Raw, and I just changed some of the values here to kind of make it the way I wanted it to look. All right, so for this last layer, I noticed that there's this line on her forehead that I did not want, so I just went ahead and did a healing brush tool and I got rid of that line. All right, for the noise layer, I press Alt Option plus New Layer tab, put that into soft light and fill with 50% gray. Right click the layer, convert to Smart Object, and I already did that, so I'm going to delete that. And I went to Filter, Noise, Add Noise, and it'll bring this up. I went to 35% on Uniform to add a consistent noise level to the whole image. All right guys, I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment in the comment section. Feel free to subscribe to my channel if you guys want some more Photoshop tutorials in the future. If you guys have any art that you want me to look at, please tag me on Instagram at jfarmphoto. That's all I have for you guys. Have a good one.